All right, Art, in the,
It's got a summary in
yeah.
bylaws.
So on the ISHA, in our agenda, I'm gonna move you up to talk about the compliance with the rules.
Okay, I do have a little memo here that.
Then I wanna have a little anticipation. After this, Gemma Perry, we're gonna give you your certificate, so.
Thank you. What page on the, is this a page in the?
No, this is a walk-in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I asked Art to just provide a brief summary. We didn't know exactly, I know Mr. Walsh had asked this question. I think it was, what I told Art is I think it was in light of some of the stuff that was in the newspaper lately with
No, it's
Bolingbrook.
highlighted in light of the paper. I've asked before, since it's an important part of our, how do we manage the IHSA, who's responsible? And I just wanted to push it up because there was another article in the paper about some other school in a different state where they
Right.
had a huge problem with
Right.
kids not even living in the school district, so.
Well, what I tried to do, obviously, there's a lot of bylaws out there related to different things. Some are athletic, some are school-related or activity-related. But what I did is try to highlight some of the ones that have recently been in the news with other schools that have been in violation of certain bylaws. So a couple of them that I just wanted to give examples of how we monitor and make sure that we're in compliance, our checks and balances system that we have in place. The first one, just qualifications of coaches. Prior to obviously bringing a recommendation forward to the board, the HR department and the athletic department checks on the coaches' qualifications per the IHSA standards, which are either a teaching certificate, sub-certificate, or they have to have ASEP certification. That's the initial ones that the IHSA asks for.
What's the last one, ASAP?
ASEP certification, which is a coaching certification. It's a class that they sign up for. They take a test. If they have done that ever in their career, it's on the computer that we can look up. There's one of about 7 different coaching certifications that a coach can get, but the ASEP is the one that the IHSA really kind of puts out there. So once that coach is hired by the district, the next step is they have actually changed this year. I go in and I register that individual as a coach for our building, and I tag them whether they're a head coach or an assistant coach. With that, then they are given a login that I send to them via an email, an RBHS email. All of our coaches have an RBHS email, regardless if they're in-house or out-house. So they get that email, and then they have a login with the IHSA. They will have to log in, and they take this performance-enhancing steroid test, which is a 40-question multiple-choice test. They have to score an 80%. Once they do that, fulfills the IHSA's requirement. I then go on into our school center, and I can check and make sure that everybody has done that. That also you just have to do once. So if we hire a coach that has previously been in another district, it'll be tagged to their school, and I just will know that obviously through the resume and things, and I'll put that in, and then it will show the date that they completed that. So currently all of our coaches have that, they have all passed that test, which I can see, and which I do check and obviously go over during my coaches meeting. If there is coaches that need to get that, they need to get that before their first day of practice. So
And
that's
how long does that last for?
That's last for their duration of once they've taken it once, they're on in the system as taking it.
Okay.
Athletic season limitations, this was one that was just recently happened at one of the other schools. Basically, there's in-season limitations as far as how many contests you can have, which varies by sport, to number of off-season practices, summer practices you can have. Summer camps have to be, you have 25 contact days. The way that we make sure we're in compliance is anything that any of our programs do, they submit a schedule to me, which then I put onto our scheduling system, which is Schedule Star, which then I can track to make sure that we are in compliance. When I meet with the head coaches and develop a schedule with them, we know the max. Like, for example, baseball, softball is 35 game max, so we obviously don't schedule more than that. Or if you do, you know that potentially you might have to cancel one at the end. We have overscheduled knowing that the weather's going to cancel a game out, but we do make sure that we do not ever schedule over, or play more than we're supposed to. So once again, it's just, me making sure and communicating with the coaches and have that schedule system set up. As far as open gyms, because that was one that was out there, open gym is what it is. It's open gym. And it's open to any of our students whenever we do it. It might be basketball open gym, but anybody is more than welcome to come, and our students know that, our coaches know that. There's no instruction going on. It's just open gym. So we've tried to have, open gym for baseball, softball, water polo, wrestling, you name it, we try to offer it, but it is open gym. The other schools that have done it, they got in trouble because they made it girls varsity open gym. Well, you can't do that. That's per bylaw. Coaches' attendance for rule interpretation meetings. This is one that when I log a coach into the system, they are tagged as the head coach. They have to go in and they have to view a rules interpretation meeting based upon their sport. This will go over any bylaw changes that each sport has. That is tagged with the IHSA that I can go on and look. I make the deadline about 2 weeks. Actually, I make the deadline prior to their first competition. The IHSA sets it like, let's say 3 weeks from now. But I don't think that we should start a season without knowing any of the bylaw changes. So part of my coach's handbook is that when that due date is, so when that due date hits, I go and check and make sure all of our coaches have completed that. And if you happen to miss, the IHSA sends out reminders, not only to me, actually to Pam, and to our coaches, that if there was something that if the deadline is approaching, they will send these emails along with me, but that's, I'll go through and check that on our school center. Principal's attendance at a meeting, I'm the designee that goes to, actually the first year Pam came with me. We go to, there's a number of different schools. I've gone to Addison Trail over the last couple of years. We go to that meeting, and the IHSA will present any potential bylaw change moving forward. We get a code that then I come back and I have to input into the IHSA saying that I attended the meeting. From that meeting, we will discuss any potential changes and then how we would vote based upon each kind of division. We vote actually at that meeting if we would be in favor. The IHSA takes it back to their group. All the votes are collected of what can actually go to then actual voting, which is later in the year, and then we will go on as a school and vote on those potential bylaw changes. So this year, I think there was 30 that got to the voting period, and there was about 7 that passed. On the back page, physical examinations, the way this works, every coach is given at the beginning of the season, like right now for the spring season, started last week. The coach is given a piece of paper of everybody that has a physical on file. Now, all of our freshmen have physicals, obviously, to get into school, but everybody else has to have a yearly physical on file. The IHSA changed the rule last year that a physical lasts for 395 days, not a school year, so it allows some flexibility to get you through a year. Because what we've had in the past is someone might come out for baseball and they had a physical last April, and now you're in the middle of the season and you got to make sure you get another physical. So they extended that period to allow that to get you through a year. But we'll submit that to the coaches. Once the coaches have picked their team, we get that final roster, we will check again and make sure that we have not only the physical but the paperwork that we require. And then once again, when we go prior to going into the IHSA playoffs, we will check again because there's the steroid release form, there's other forms that we just want to make sure. So we kind of do it 3 times a year, to make sure that they have a physical on file. Scholastic standing, kind of same thing at the beginning of each season. We will give a list to the coaches of any student that did not pass 5 classes. That student is ineligible for the entire semester. And then what we do is a weekly check. I would get an email on Thursdays that will give us all the students that are not passing 5 classes. This was also a bylaw change from last year. Last year you only had to be passing 4. This year you have to be passing 5. So if any student is not passing 5, we will then send an email to the coach saying, your athlete on your team is only currently passing 4. They're ineligible until they get that grade up. Comes out on Thursday, they're ineligible on Monday for the entire week until they get that grade up. What usually occurs is a student is absent and they're missing an assignment, and then they can contact that teacher, turn that assignment in before the weekend, or on Monday we can check Skyward, which will then have it updated, or the teacher has to sign off that they have now completed the assignment and now they're passing. So that's a weekly check. We have very few athletes that are ineligible for any length of time. It usually is due to a vacation or an illness where they're just missing work to turn it in. Residency is another big one that's been on the news. We haven't really had any issues in the past, but, you know, at the beginning of the year, obviously, everybody has to prove residency at that point. If they can't, they're not even allowed into our school. But if there was an instance where we have somebody on one of our teams that, and I go over this in our coach's handbook and stress this, that if you think that there might be an issue, please bring it to my attention. I would then contact John Passarella, and his office would work and make sure that that person was living in district. We have never had it where we've had to remove somebody during a school year, but it is, you know, on the radar that we, you know, if we do think, then we go through it. Another one is transfer. When a student transfers in, whether it's at the beginning of the year or during the school year, the school the school that they're coming from has to send us what's called a principal's concurrence form. On that form, it'll list anything that they were doing at the current school as well as their grades, and then provide us with other information such as legal guardianship and things like that. Because I've kind of lived with these bylaws, I know what to look for. But if there is any red flags, what we do is we submit everything to the IHSA for a ruling. And that we probably get 5 or 6 a year that we have to submit to the ruling, and most of the time it's related to guardianship. There's specific rules that the IHSA has, you know, with if your dad lives somewhere, your mom lives somewhere else, and they're not legally separated, then it becomes an issue, unfortunately. And we've had that situation where we've had to submit and someone's ineligible for a length of time until they work it out and the IHSA tells us that they're okay. So there's not a lot, but there is kind of a process in place whenever we get a transfer student in. So these are just kind of some of the ones that we're kind of out there right now. I think we do a pretty good job of kind of checks and balances more than just once of doing it. There's definitely a process in place of making sure that we're in compliance with all these. I don't know if there's other specific ones that you wanted me to kind of get into, but hopefully kind of hit the ones that we...
I want to ask you 2 questions, though,
Yes.
if you don't mind. Volunteer coaches, do the rules apply to them also?
Volunteer coaches are kind of the same thing. They have to either have ASEP or sub-certificate or be have a teaching license. It's very spelled out now, and that's part of our, you know, we require the background check, and then obviously will be with you. But they are also registered with the IHSA, and they will also do the drug test. So any volunteer coach. There's a college student is the only one that's a little bit different if they're doing like a student teaching type assignment.
Okay.
But any volunteer coach, yes. Paid or non-paid, they still have to be registered with the IHSA.
And then, because you said it in here, is there any time a student coming to our school is, you know, just generally ineligible to play sports? I know if you go to a private school, you can't.
Yeah, there's rules between public and private to public. The only, where our students have been ineligible in the past is if, let's say right now, you tried out for baseball at LT, let's say, and then you transferred over, you are ineligible for the entire season.
Oh, okay.
And that has happened. We had someone in the fall that stayed at a school for a week and ran cross country. Because of that, when they came here, they're ineligible. So we have had it. It's not a lot, but that's the biggest one. As long as you've never done something at another school as far as athletics, you are still pretty much okay. Depending on when you come in, sometimes there's a 15-day period where you're ineligible, but it's if you start somewhere else, you're ineligible for the whole year. They can still be on the team and participate, but they can't compete.
Okay.
Or guardianship, right?
The guardianship is the other big one, yeah. We've had, like I said, probably 4 or 5 cases on a given year of guardianship, and that rule so kids can't jump back and forth if they're living with parents that are separated or anything like that, that someone has to have legal guardianship of that living in your district to be eligible.
Right. School code allows for students to enroll under temporary guardianship for a school to enroll a student, but the IHSA only allows it if there is court-ordered
Right.
guardianship. So it eliminates, I'm going to live with my uncle in this school district, you know, maybe because it's got a better program or it's better in athletics. The IHSA only recognizes formal guardianship.
Correct.
So, I guess to sum it up, you're our key person to know all the rules and make sure that they're being enforced.
Correct.
And you're also,
the athletics
although
side.
Sandy's shaking her head back there.
For the athletic side.
I assume the assistant athletic directors help out too, but.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously Terry Kavanaugh might.
And part of your plan is all the coaches are reminded on a seasonal basis and what the
Yes,
rules are.
the ones that really towards them, and because there's a whole section on like limitations of each sport and all that, so we touch base on that and talk about it.
And then you do it again before the summer, because that's also where schools run into trouble, like,
I usually send out an email that says, here are the dates that you're allowed to practice, because there's blackout periods,
Right.
which is the end of the month. You're allowed 25 contact days. So when they submit, and I think you might see tonight, the summer brochure of summer offerings, if you added up the dates, you'll see that we're 25 days or less for all of our sports camps.
okay.
High school sports camps, the grade schools, that doesn't matter, but the high school camps are 25 days or left. And then the blackout is at the first week of August.
Okay.
So,
Art, is there any camp that a kid would try out for or work at in the summer that would make them ineligible for the fall
if you're
semester?
working,
No, in a camp. Any other camps or?
Camps are technically open for everybody, right?
yeah, there's rules as far as how many kids. Well, actually, they just changed that rule of, they used to, like, our coach couldn't go to an outside camp, and like in California, let's say, and bring all of our kids. That would be in violation of one of the bylaws. But they've now changed the bylaws where the emphasis is now on the coaches, not on the kids, of what they can and can't do. We don't have any coaches that do that, but.
And the bylaw changes you talked about, what were the topic or theme? Was it just many?
Oh,
many
it
good stuff?
varies every year. I mean, there's bylaw changes on uniforms, on patches you can have, or what type of balls you have to use for the IHSA switch from, there's going to Wilson this year instead of Baden, so you have to use that. I mean, there's a full gamut of, depending on what it is. I mean, the major ones like this, there's usually not that many changes that occur.
Weren't the major ones that change in if you won a sectional, or if you won a state championship now, you move up, things like that, isn't it?
That's all towards the the private schools. So yeah, there's a new bylaw that they changed if over a 4-year period, if a private school, let's say, was in 2A and made it to state 2 years in a row, then they're going to get bumped to class. So like Montini girls basketball, they're going to get bumped to 4A next year because they've won 3 out of the 4 state championships. So there is going to be some changes which could impact us because we're at the bottom of the 4A so if there was a bunch of public schools or private schools that got bumped up to 4A, could then move the number down and put us back down to 3A. So to be seen on.
Do we work with our feeder programs, especially when the kid is ready, the child is ready to go into high school, to work with them saying, this is what we need from you, this is what we're expecting if you're going to come into this sport? Or how do we communicate that?
I think we've done a really good job over the last couple of years to extend our feeder programs to offer more, like girls basketball. We have a much better feeder program than we didn't have one in the past, but we've worked with coaches. Anytime we have a true feeder program, the individuals running the feeder program are in direct contact with our head coaches and kind of doing what we would like to see them do. So when kids do come into our program, we're using the same terminology or we're using the same basic plays. So we've tried to establish as many feeder programs as we can for our sports because that's obviously, we need those kids, so there's a lot of communication that goes on with their feeder programs.
Okay, any other questions for Art?
Just a couple. Art, is there any sport that we could conceivably add in the wintertime that would be, not a cut sport that would increase participation?
That's a good question.
You can think about it, maybe.
Yeah, we were just talking about one of the things that will come on at the end of this year. I'll do a participation survey, which will highlight any sport that the IHSA currently has. So one of the sport that we don't have that is an IHSA is boys and girls bowling. That could be an example. If we had 100 kids say that they were interested in bowling, if you offered it, that could be something.
Is an indoor track a winter sport?
Indoor track is the same as track season. Like we do indoor track right now.
Okay.
We actually have a meet tomorrow. It's just an extension of the regular season, but we offer pretty much everything there is outside of bowling. Lacrosse, which is a spring sport, but the winter sport would be boys and girls bowling.
What about bass fishing?
Where the heck did they come from?
The other question, you had a really great winter season.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. And congratulations, you and your coaches.
Thank you.
Any update on the conference?
Yeah, we've actually just basically wrapped up creating what the conference will look like next year. It's going to be a 14-team conference, 2 divisions, which we have East and West, which you would think we were in East, but we're actually in the West side. We created all new bylaws. All scheduling is done.
So it's not by size then, or?
It's by size and by levels that a certain school offers and the competitiveness of that school overall. So the smallest school, like in our division, would be Immaculate Conception, but they have been very successful on their athletics side, so we thought that they could compete on the higher or the larger division. But it's going to be a 2-year cycle to see who would shift. We're obviously going to be with the larger schools always.
So who are we with?
Glenbard South, RB Fenton, Wheaton Academy, Immaculate Conception. Now I'm going to forget.
No.
No.
St. Ed's?
How about the one?
St. Ed's and Aurora Central Catholic. That's our division.
Interesting.
So the other division, Ridgewood, Elmwood Park, Gearing Prep,
The 2 Christian schools in our.
Ileana Christian, Timothy Christian,
Elmwood Park.
Elmwood Park, yeah. 7 on each side. Walther
Walther
Lutheran.
Lutheran.
Thank you, Cindy. But yeah, so the bylaws are complete. Everything, schedules are set for almost every sport. Some sports we will do, you'll play the 7 schools in your division and then 1 or 2 crossovers. So we did think it was important to try to see as many schools as possible as establishing this new conference. So baseball is playing a 2-game series with everyone on their side and then a single game on everyone on the other side. In most sports, there'll be 2 conference champions, in East and West. In some sports, we will do kind of a mid-year. Whoever's in first will play the first on the other side.
How many of the sports that are in independent conferences now will now be part of that conference?
The only sport that we will now, boys volleyball, we might have a conference. We're waiting to see if one school will add it. Badminton, I believe, will now be a conference sport. And I think that might be it. Nobody has swimming, water polo.
Okay. Any other questions for Art?
Going back to academic eligibility, you said there's a list of students who are not passing the 5 classes.
Mm-hmm.
And how is that list produced?
That's produced by Skyward on a weekly basis. Every Thursday, I will get, and Terry Kavanaugh will get, a eligibility sheet from Skyward that will show all of our kids that are not passing 5 classes.
So the computer sends it directly to you?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we take that email and we send it out to each specific coach saying, here are your 2 athletes that currently aren't passing 5. They will be ineligible starting Monday.
And is it all kids not passing? And then you have to weed out the athletes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no chance that the list comes out, it's only athletes and some are missing from it? It's
No,
all
it's
students?
the whole school.
The whole
So,
school?
because activities falls under that too.
Okay.
IHSA activities will fall under that same guy. In fact, this year, another bylaw change, but they forgot to update the activities side. So at the beginning of the year, currently a person involved in an IHSA activity only had to be passing 4
Okay.
instead of 5.
Thank
But,
you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Art? Art, thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Good job. All right, I'd like to have Gemma Perry come on up.
Gemma earned a German 2 bronze medal for having over the 70th percentile in the national.
Swear to God, Gemma, they make these. Cheers. Let's face right there. Congratulations. We appreciate it. Appreciate you coming out. Very proud of you. Thank you.